You certainly can.
Very good. I'll call the meeting to order. Excuse me. Very good. There's Gerard. Okay, so thank you all. Excuse me. February 11th meeting underway, 7 o'clock. Any public participation? Seeing none. We have meeting minutes, several to approve, starting with the Town Hall Subcommittee meeting minutes. Steve, is that correct?
For the January 21st meeting, absolutely. You do have a quorum of that subcommittee here. Both Teray and Dawn are on that committee, so they can proceed if they wish.
Is Don on it? I don't see him.
Dawn's on. Yep. Dawn and Teray are on.
Oh, sorry, in the bottom corner. Yes, okay.
Like Hollywood Square, right? He's
Sorry, I was going across the screen. All right, so then I'll move that we approve the minutes from the January 21st meeting of the Town Hall Subcommittee.
Second, Dawn, okay. Any discussion?
Nope,
And of you two, all those in favor?
Aye.
in favor.
Very good, thank you. The January 21st Finance Town Hall Subcommittee meeting minutes have been approved. And who else just joined? Doug Butler, okay. Very good. The next was our meeting, January 28th, regular Finance Subcommittee meeting 2 weeks ago. Anyone like to make a motion on those minutes?
I move to approve those minutes.
Second.
second.
So the motion was moved and seconded for the meeting minutes of the January 28th. Any discussion? I didn't see anything else with those minutes either. All those in favor of accepting the regular Finance Committee meeting minutes from January 28th?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Unanimous, Steve.
Yep.
Okay. Items then for tonight's discussion, we have 4 budgets before us, I believe. The first one says Finance Committee Town Hall. It really, I think it should have said Town Council Subcommittee. If you,
If they wanted to make any comments, Mr. Chairman, I think that if you'd wish, if you wanted to go to do the town council budget at last, because you have department heads here that
Yep.
they don't have to stay for the whole meeting, but Kevin and I do. So if you want to move on to
Okay.
one of the subcommittees, then they can get on their way.
okay. We'll do the IT department then first. So I know we have subcommittee minutes. If you didn't see it, you got an email this evening from Brian to all of you. But Brian, are you folks on the subcommittee? Do you have comments? And then we'll go to the budget.
Sure. Do we want to have Kevin go ahead and do his part first and then I'll fill in? Or am I supposed to talk first?
That might be best, but if I could just do a brief overview for the group, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. So
Sure, go
tonight,
ahead.
you'll have 4 more budgets tonight, which is taking us, well on our way through our budget odyssey. All in, all the budgets that you saw on the first meeting and you'll see in this meeting, all in, the increase, tax levy increase is a 2.72% at this point in time. Kevin and I have been looking at the others, and I think we are pretty confident we're going to be pretty frugal, right, Kevin? Kevin's saying that like this, but he's not unmuting. So with that, Kevin can go into the other budgets. I just wanted to point that out as a general statement.
Jim, did you want me to start with the IT budget?
Yes, please. The IT budget first. Yep.
Okay. The IT budget, overall, we're looking at a decrease to the IT budget next year of $2,881. This decrease breaks down under the personal services portion of the budget. There is an increase of $5,346, and this is for contractual and negotiated increases. Under contractual services, there is a decrease of $6,365. Two of the main areas in there, we discontinued some software programs due to low usage. That was the C-Click fix. And under the professional services line item, there was money in there for outside report writing services. That is now being done in-house. Materials and supplies are level funded. The sundry charges, which are basically subscriptions, have been decreased $1,862. The total tax levy request for fiscal 2022 is $371,671. And we have Todd Bowden here, the IT director, if there are any specific questions with regards to this budget.
Very good. Todd, do you want to make any additional comments?
Kevin pretty much summarized it. Not too much happening with our budget.
Okay. You can raise your hand electronically or physically if you have a question and comments. And Brian, do you want to give comments for the subcommittee or others on the subcommittee?
Yes, sir. So Stefan and Todd and Evan, Kenny and I met last week. Overall, with the budget going down, there's not that much to quibble about. There are a couple of things that we did pick up on. One is that Munis related software maintenance is something that has increased in large numbers. In fact, last year it was a pretty large increase. But in this budget, it's only up 3.54%. So it seems like that's a little more reasonable in this year's budget, which is great because it is kind of interesting. The software maintenance represents 90% of the contractual services budget and 38% of the overall budget. And Munis is the biggest part of that, 59% of the software maintenance budget. So it is something that we want to keep track on. But the fact is that it also, a lot of the town uses it. So a lot of that money coming back from the enterprise accounts and from the school accounts is part of that expertise. Randy Mercer is the guy, I think I have that right, Todd, who does the reporting, the Munis reporting, and kind of supports everybody in town, which helps keep those costs down. The other thing is that we talked a little bit about IT security, and we ran into a conundrum in that Todd rightly pointed out that perhaps an open meeting is not necessarily the best place to have that conversation. And that's something that I would like to make clear, to see if we can come to some kind of a decision on, because in part that's my expertise is in IT security, such as I have, and so it's something that's very interesting to me. Todd made the point that maybe it's not as budget specifically important, and maybe not something we should be talking about specifically, in a recorded session where people could go and look at it later and go, oh, they don't have any of this stuff, so let's go attack them that way. So I'd like to figure out whether, I feel like IT security is something that we need to be aware of. And one of the cool things that I found out about, somehow it started up last year as well, but I didn't notice it as much, is that the town has taken out an insurance policy to help, in the case where there is an attack, which is just terrific. And, that definitely takes some of the burden off. But I feel like I could bring some insight into this and would like to do it, but I don't want to put anybody in jeopardy or, share things that ought not be shared. So that's something that I feel like we have to work out. And I definitely want to be sensitive to Todd's requirements on that too. Stefan, did you have anything you wanted to add or clarify?
No, I think you covered the IT security portion very well. There was one item at the very bottom of the budget file that's before you. It was the less school transfer and less enterprise fund. I had some questions as to, I guess, the level of these. And my understanding was that these were set quite a while ago. I'm not sure how frequently they are revisited, but I know there are a number of budgets, not just IT, but a number of budgets that that have the same type of transfers associated with them. And I'm just not sure how frequently they're reviewed in terms of, I guess, fairness. From an IT perspective, the town has seen quite an appreciable change in IT. In particular, with, I guess, the central architecture versus the school architecture. And I'm just not sure if the correct funding split is currently reflected here in this the school transfer amount. I could be wrong, but there is unfortunately there's no details on this particular budget that describe what that $147,000 figure is comprised of.
Which is the school transfer
School transfer, yes.
last year, and then 152 is in the budget for this year, 152,500.
That's correct. Thank you for the clarification.
So Kevin or Todd, do you want to try to expand on the question, help answer the question?
I know several years ago that was based on the number of drops that between what the school had and the overall town had. So there was some type of split based on that. So I don't know, Todd, if you can explain.
What I can tell you is that the schools portion is 27%, the enterprise portion is 37% of those salaries. And that was consistent both in last year's budget and this year's budget.
Yeah, and the schools in the past few years, we've increased that chargeback, but we've also increased the amount of support we're giving to them. Whereas they used to have outsourced to a third party their a certain portion of their support without giving up too much. We now do that in-house for them, but at a much lower rate than they were paying that third party.
Okay. All right. Stefan, does that help at all?
Certainly. Yeah, there was just one last question that I had, and I guess this is a general question, me being relatively new to the Finance Committee. But in terms of the details that are behind the transfers, is that something that we review here at the Finance Committee? I don't remember seeing this last year.
No, I don't think we review department by department transfers. Steve, it's called out, I think, but not reviewed by us, I guess.
It's certainly on every budget when there is a transfer. I'm not so sure there is a robust review is what Stefan wants, but on a lot of accounts, it's based on, percentage of time spent sort of things by maybe Kevin or I, because we have smaller transfers in ours. But I think we could certainly do a more robust in the future on these, on enterprise funds and school transfer funds. If the council so wishes, we can certainly do that. I do know on the school part, a lot of money has been saved over there, not only on ongoing operations, but on new ventures and new construction. So think if when you look at the like the Walton School, we did a lot of that stuff in-house by our own by Todd's crew, instead of outsourcing that made that upgrade come in much easier. Also, a lot of work done in the schools, increasing their internet capacity is done by Todd and his crew. So Kevin was right. We kind of looked at per drop in the beginning, trying to get a baseline, and that's years and years ago. And I think we stayed at around 140,000. We didn't change that in a while, right, Todd? That was kind of a few years we kept that level.
Correct.
Yeah. So, but I think that we certainly can look into that. That's certainly not something that we can give you a better breakdown on that in the future.
I know Dan has a question. So when it comes to chargeback analysis, I mean, do you have a time code that you use, Todd, when you put time in against the schools versus time in against the rest of the enterprise? Are you able to see reports in that regard on a quarterly or annual basis?
No, we haven't tracked on that level.
Dan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so we've looked at the transfers from time to time when they come up, and it's not just this one, but it's also, for example, Steve and Kevin's time that gets charged to, say, the light department or DPW. So since I've been on the finance committee, the question of transfers has come up. And as I recall the rule, we have to have some basis that says this is a reasonable transfer. And it's often just the time spent. But all you really have to do is document some reasonable approach to allocating the charges between departments and particularly enterprise accounts. And that's all you really need to do. So whenever I've asked, Kevin or Steve regarding that question, they've always given me, a solid answer, said, well, it's based on this time, or, in this case, drops or whatever it is. So we really, at the finance committee level, we really haven't spent any time actually looking at it. We just usually ask the question, how is it determined? They give us the answer, and then we move on.
That's
Very good. And
we can give you some better reporting on that for sure.
yep. And I might as well ask, when you refer to a drop, what does that mean?
So a drop is a network connection.
So it's a unit, it's whatever, a printer, a PC, anything used in the network. Got it. Okay. So you don't track time, as my question was asked, as long as it's reasonable, as Dan says, it meets some sort of either accounting or operational criteria, reasonable approach. It's an accepted, capable transfer. Okay.
Right.
Anybody else? IT.
Dan again. This time I got questions about on the security side, or maybe a comment might be a better way of putting it, to Brian's thoughts on assisting with security. As it happens, this morning I'm on an IT subcommittee for a local bank, and we discussed the security at great length and what people are doing and what's been affected. So it brought up a couple questions for me that I guess maybe for Todd. Do you know if we use solar winds, and we have any risk on solar winds? And if we're not comfortable discussing this in an open meeting, then I would suggest that maybe just Brian and Todd get together, and then we don't have to have an open meeting. We won't have a quorum. It'll just be mano a mano, and we can avoid any open meeting issues.
And Todd actually mentioned that as an option, to just get together on a more casual basis, which sounds like it might be the way to go here.
Right. I was going to say, it seems more operational based versus financial based. I know it has overlap though, right, Brian?
Right. Because so, for example, if with the hack of solar winds and at the government, or if we get malware where we have, we lose everything, we could talk about some serious money trying to recover our system. And and of course you're spending money to pay off, the hacker, for example. Now you are talking some serious dollars. So my biggest worry is the security of the system. And one of the things that I've learned is the biggest issue is the phishing attacks, where an employee inadvertently, or maybe on purpose, clicks on an email. He thinks it's, oh, Steve Mayo sent me a note with an attachment. He clicks on the attachment, and next thing you know, the bad guy is in our system. And that gets extremely expensive. So things like training all of our employees not to click on, any email that comes through is absolutely critical. And no matter how many times you train them, there's always one person that's going to accidentally click on that email and cause a lot of trouble. So that's what scares me and keeps me up at night.
Yeah, if I could suggest, I think that Dan's suggestion is excellent, is that perhaps Brian and Todd, I would include the chair of the finance committee as well, if he wishes, my chair of my board, and Kevin, and perhaps John Spinello, because we do have insurance, to kind of, maybe that's a good group to get everybody together and to see, where we are, what it covers, and what have you. So we
Would
can-
that fall under town, sort of open meeting law strictures?
No, because it's individuals just talking to me. It's not a committee. No one's creating a committee, so.
I
that's okay.
see.
That sounds good. Brian, you good with that? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just one other thing I just wanted to throw in there, and that is, have we ever had any complaints from the schools or the enterprise folks in terms of the amount of money that they're charged back for these IT services?
Kevin? But not for years from the schools, I will say that.
We've tried to increase it once before to a higher number. We felt like we were giving the school much more time at one point in time. That this number should have been higher for the schools, but we did settle on a round number of approximately, I think it was $140,000. So it's been right around in that ballpark for the last couple of years.
Okay, that's interesting, Kevin, because what I saw in that sheet was that it was a straight 27% last year and this year. From last year to this year, it was 27% of the overall salary number. So
Right.
it went up. It goes up year to
The
year.
past couple of years, correct, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I just didn't know if, those could be random percentages that just happened to work out. I don't know what the rule was. But anyway, if people, if they're not complaining, then it seems like it's a model that's working potentially. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Good. I guess my only last question was on the Munis maintenance. Does that get paid to the state?
No, that's a private company.
Private company that runs the state platform, right? Isn't that a state platform
No,
program
no,
or something?
that's Tyler Technologies, which is a private government software provider,
Okay.
not affiliated with the state. No.
All right. Anybody else?
Looks like Brian has his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
No,
It already
I
happened.
think
and
he's
then I forgot.
stretching still.
There's a coyote in my front yard.
I will say
All right,
this,
very good. I think that,
IT has done a
Yep.
great job. They've come a long way from years and years ago. And this year, maybe more than ever, with everyone working remotely and, or with many people working remotely in these remote meetings. We've had very few issues, if any. So great job by the team over there.
Indeed.
very good. Todd, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
I know the chief is entertained, so I'd like to go to the library and get through the library and then move to the chief, if that's all right.
The library budget,
So,
I'm sorry, Jim.
yep,
Well,
you're ready. Go ahead. Thank you.
On the library budget, we're requesting an increase of $20,999 over the current year. This increase breaks down under the salaries. The increase is $18,839. This includes prior contractual negotiations and also negotiated increases for this year. I do want to point out the librarian's contract for fiscal '22 is not included. That contract is not settled yet, so that's not part of these numbers. Under contractual supplies is an increase of $2,160. This is for the line item automated network services, which is for Noble. Materials and supplies are level funded. Total budget request is $1,751,632, with $1,702,493 coming from tax levy and $49,139 coming from available funds, which are the library trust funds.
And Catherine, you speaking on behalf?
I can answer any questions. I think Kevin covered most of it. The one thing
Very
I
good.
can add is that that $2,000 that goes to Noble is actually a material. It's part of a database. So that keeps us certified without an increase in books and publications.
Right. Okay. Any questions?
You want to hear from the subcommittee?
Yeah, I'm getting there. Seeing if subcommittee next, please.
Myself, Teray, and Joe met with Catherine and a couple of the, three of the library trustees. I noticed that Cindy Schatz is on this call. She was with us last week along with Kevin Scanlon and Adam Rogers. So we went to the budget. It's pretty straightforward. The only increases, as Kevin says, of 1.5% basically for step increases and the supervisor's new contract. In March, the negotiations will begin with all the librarians for the new contract, which will begin July 1st. As Catherine just mentioned, we are making the 13% level for the budget for certification, so we're good there. We did talk a little bit about fiscal year 21 because obviously everything's changed. The library is not open for the general public. And things are going much better than I certainly would have expected. The numbers are up. The curbside pickup or side door pickup of books is working. The library does expect to return a significant amount of money back to the general fund because we don't have the pages and their costs like they normally do. And if somebody's on vacation or has sick or something like that, we don't have to bring somebody in on a temporary basis or overtime or things like that. So maybe, I think Catherine gave me a note that said maybe $60,000 to $70,000 or something like that might be returned to the general fund for 21, which is, it's unfortunate, but on the other hand, it's money saved. And the other thing I was going to mention is that the Sunday hours, as everybody knows, has been out. And we're not putting the Sunday hours back in for this budget right now, but it is under consideration come November. We'll see what's going on with the virus. And perhaps we can get Sunday hours back because I know it's very popular. A lot of people like the Sunday hours. It'd be good to have it back, but right now it doesn't make a lot of sense. So pretty straightforward, but I think the library and the staff have been doing a great job and providing all the services they normally do to the citizens, despite the fact the library is closed. Everything's being met. So that's it for me.
Great. Yeah, when I read it over, some of the items you described in the write-up, I was unaware as well, that there's still a lot, excuse me, a lot going on, even though the doors aren't actually open. So that's great for those that choose and those that are looking to get some services. So that's good to hear and good to know. Thank you. Anybody else on the subcommittee? Comments? Anybody else have questions? Doug? Doug?
He's on mute.
He
Muted.
knows.
I'm unmuted. Yeah, quick question. Again, with that 13% requirement to spend, did that get waived for this year, or are we going to try and, spend that money? Because it looks like
Oh, you're talking about the money for this year, the spending
materials,
of
yeah.
it? Yeah, we'll spend that this year.
okay, because it looks like you've got a long ways to go. You've got 160.
Yes, that's because we couldn't get a lot of materials. They weren't shipping them.
Okay.
So you don't pay for them until you get them.
Okay.
The state has recognized that there are problems that way. So if we didn't spend it all, that wouldn't hurt us. The fact that it had been appropriated is what was important.
I guess the other question, and this might be heresy coming from this group, is given instead of returning the $200,000, are there things in terms of materials, would you want to spend this year $325,000 on materials and return less money to the town?
If I had something that was really, really worth buying for the town, I would say yes.
Yeah, that was the question. Is there
Yeah,
something that's
no,
been
we're,
building up that
we we very nicely are meeting our needs right now.
Brian, did you have your hand up?
Oh, I was just going to ask the same thing he was asking about.
Me and
Okay, so
Brian
you-
agreeing on something. Go figure.
Yikes. Dawn?
Yeah, so just looking at the contractual services, materials and supplies, so we're only at about 35, 36% actual spending versus what's budgeted. Is that timing related, or is it just that we haven't spent what was expected?
Yeah, in some cases, it's timing related. Utilities are running a little, we've got some savings there. So there are some things that we're gonna save on. But most of the purchasing for books and materials, that's definitely all gonna happen.
So, and the actual expenses, Kevin, does it represent 6 months or 7 months of actual expenses?
That's 6 months. That's
That's-
through
That's,
warrant 26, which would
yeah,
be half a year.
that's 6 months.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have comments? All right, now, like you said, Sunday hours were very popular, and I think when we can all get out and move around a little more freely, Sunday hours will be something that would have to be reconsidered, so appreciate it. And Cindy, thanks for joining us tonight, and I think that'll do it.
Could I just say quickly that the trustees are really thrilled with the commitment and the work of the library staff during this past year. The fact that they have not only continued offering the programs that we were accustomed to having and take them online, they've managed to create new programs that were not in the repertoire before. They pivoted so seamlessly, so quickly within those 2 weeks of closing down. And the service, we've heard back from so many people in the town. And I have a very active member, a very active role with the Friends. So I hear it from the Friends side as well. People are so thrilled with what they've been getting well beyond the side door service. Really thrilled. And it's really owed to Catherine's leadership and all of our librarians and paraprofessional staff.
That's great, and it's such a such an asset for the town, and the town is making use of it, and it's just a reciprocating thing, which is great.
It is definitely reciprocating. It's you get the library that you want, and the town has always supported us, and we've had lots of support from town departments too throughout all of this. So it's good to be in Wakefield.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you both. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. I would say police department next. Kevin, you?
Yes. Police department budget, we're recommending an increase for next year of $249,703 over the current year. This increase breaks down under personal services. The increase is $240,953, and this is for contractual and negotiated increases. Under contractual services, there is an overall increase of $11,750. We decreased a couple line items. We decreased the hired equipment, $2,000, the telephone line item, $5,000, both based on prior year usage. We decreased the unclassified line item, $50,000. But then we did open up a new professional services line item. This is for the recovery coach and the mental health clinician. They were both in the unclassified line item. We thought we should move those up into a segregated line item called professional services. We've also added $37,500 to that line item to make the mental health clinician a position that has full-time coverage. We are using a CARES reimbursement to cover half of those costs, or 18,750 of that increase for the mental health clinician. The CARES program runs through December 31st of 2021. So we'd be able to recover half that cost. Under materials and supplies, there is an overall decrease of $3,000, which is based on both prior and current year usage. The total budget request for fiscal '22 is $6,312,358.
Okay, Kevin, and then Chief's here to answer questions. Do you want me to go to the subcommittee, Chief, or do you want to say a few words now?
Kevin did a great breakdown on the changes in the budget there. I can answer any questions that anybody has. If they want me to elaborate on anything, I can do that.
Okay, I'll go to the subcommittee first. Bill and others.
Okay, I'll just start off. Amy, Joanne, and Gerard and I met with the chief last Wednesday. I'd like to be judicious with his time because not only is he sitting in the same spot, but he has the same clothes on. So I'm a little worried about him. Looking good, Chief. So we sort of, our introductory approach was looking at the budget at the major category levels, looking at the increases and decreases. Some of the things that we talked, perhaps the chief will elaborate about, are some things that Kevin talked about. It was obviously no professional services category sort of jumped out, and he went into great detail and explained that, and it's fascinating and amazing part of what's involved now with police work in the community. And as Kevin pointed out, we are getting grant money back for some of those expenses, so that's notable. The chief noted, Chief, I do have this right, that you said you're fully staffed for the first time in about 10 years, the department?
That's correct. We've been budgeted for 47, and we just finally reached that number this past December.
So we'd probably jinx them. Of course, could be retirements anytime in any of the, the departments, but that was interesting. We also talked about the overtime, and that was interesting. Joanne brought that up, and he explained some of the things that went on with the overtime budget, things that would be obvious to some of us, some of the major events that happen in town. He also spoke about, and maybe Chief, you could talk about this a little, that recent Police Act reform is going to necessitate, I believe, body cams. And maybe, I think it'd be interesting for the committee to hear about what that holds in the future for your department. And those were kind of the major things that I put in the minutes. So obviously I defer to Amy or Joanne or Gerard for any other sort of major topics or things we might want the chief to touch on. But I want to, I think we all want to thank the chief, who's very gracious, answered our questions extremely well, and was well prepared for the discussion. So we're grateful for that.
Thank you.
Very good. Others on the committee.
Jim, I'll just jump in and say, Bill and Kevin's breakdown was 99% of what I have jotted down. I'll just go on to further ask or make the point that, yeah, we did ask about the capital requests and things like that, which Chief will probably give you a bit of an overview. So cars are generally a topic of conversation perennially at this meeting. So we did dig into that to some extent. Yeah, NEMLAC subscription, some real boring year-over-year stuff, but great breakdown from Bill and Kevin.
Excuse me. I would note too that the chief noted you made an effort to cut some expenses where he could to help offset some of the increased costs we were seeing in other categories.
Of course, we were sad to see the 4th of July dollars taken out of the budget, of course.
Right.
So.
Right. Yep. Speaking of activities in the town of Wakefield, exactly.
I don't know if Joanne.
Chief, would you mind then?
I just want to, Joanne, do you have any feedback?
I was just going to cue the chief up to cover some of the longer range planning based on changes in population and new development. I think it's something that the full finance committee should bear in mind, not necessarily regarding the fiscal year 22 budget, but certainly is, I know the chief will touch upon that because we want to continue to be able to do the good work that the department has been delivering. And as new developments come to town and more people, so too come some of the increasing needs for services. So just want the chief to be able to elaborate, spend a few moments on that after he discusses the highlights of the current budget.
Very good. So Chief, one was, and I know you were jotting things down too, body cams associated with the Reform Act. You want to touch on that?
Sure. So before the Reform Act was even a thought, we were already researching body cams. It's something that we like the idea of. We'd like to have them, but we needed to know the expense. So we looked at two companies. The first was a company called Axon. This is the company that we get our tasers from. The benefit of going with the same company that we get our tasers from is that the tasers and the cameras actually talk to each other electronically. So a taser gets turned on, the camera gets turned on automatically. Matter of fact, pretty much all the equipment that we use now talks to itself, talks to each other, from the laptops in the cars to the light bars on top of the cars. Whenever one gets activated, they activate everything else. It's beneficial to have those things talking to each other, because if an officer's in a situation where they have to think quickly on their feet, the last thing on their mind might be turning on the body cam. So when the lights go on, or the taser gets turned on, or the firearm gets unholstered, the body cam will turn on automatically, which is a huge benefit. So we looked at two companies. Like I said, Axon was the first. And when you look at the cost, each camera is $700 with Axon. So you're looking at probably 55 cameras, because you need one for each officer. You need some spares. We need cameras for the retirees that work details. So we looked at the number of 55. There's docking stations where they charge. When a camera gets put into a docking station, that's when it downloads all of its video and data to the cloud. And then there's data storage. Data storage is the big expense. If we were to do that ourselves, we need to get our own servers, be more work for IT. So many of these companies offer cloud-based storage and offer web-based, like evidence.com type thing. But that's where the big expense comes in. So for Axon, for 55 cameras, for startup cost, the total was $110,707. And that includes buying the docking stations and the cameras. The yearly cost after that for the data storage is $58,740. The second company we looked at was a company called WatchGuard. Same thing, 55 cameras. Their cameras were a little more expensive. Their evidence storage was a little cheaper, but the total startup cost for WatchGuard was $132,225. The recurring cost for data storage was right around $32,000. So we kind of put everything on hold when the Police Reform Act is being written, because there was a lot of talk in the Reform Act, the original version, about what the limitations would be on camera usage, how you would purchase them, what you can and can't do with them, and the training that would be required. So we want to see how that shook out. When the bill was signed by the governor on December 31st, the final version of that bill has the creation of a commission to study the use of body cameras. The commission has to come out by July 1st, 2022, with a decision on a number of things. And those would include standards for training police officers in the basic use of cameras, standards for the types of law enforcement encounters and interactions that would be recorded, and what notice, if any, should be given to those being recorded, when a camera should be activated, when to discontinue recording, whether there should be a requirement that the camera be equipped with pre-event recording, capable of recording at least 30 seconds prior to camera activation. And then the big one is a requirement preventing an officer from accessing or viewing any recording of an incident involving the officer before the officer is required to make a statement about the incident. So we're kind of waiting to see how that committee comes back and all of those things shake out. We really look into moving forward with the cameras. but it's also possible that it will be an unfunded mandate as part of the Reform Act. So if that's the case, we'll have to see what kind of state bids come out, what companies enter the bid process, and go from there. So we were looking into it, but it all went on hold as soon as the police reform bill started to be written. If anybody has any questions on the body cams, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, anyone? My question to that is that a negotiated item for a change of work practice or work environment that you'd have to deal with?
It would be, but if it's a state mandate, Steve could probably answer that question better than me. I don't have a whole lot of experience with that part of it, whether it's a state mandate. If it's a state mandate, they have to have them. I don't know if you still negotiate that.
I think that it isn't the capital costs and the ongoing costs would be an unfunded mandate, number one, based on my experience with the state. I think that even if it is an unfunded mandate, I think that there would still be an element of negotiation in there. Let's put it that way.
Understood.
As a grizzled veteran of the negotiating years now.
That was my thought. Yep. Okay, no other questions, I don't think, on that.
Jim, sorry, it's a
Dan?
little slow in my hand. Joanne also talked about developments around town and possible additional cost impacts down into the future. And so that got me thinking about our forecast, our 10-year forecast. Right now, I think I heard 47 officers in the department. I wondered if the chief foresaw a need to increase that given the expansion of our population and developments around town or something else, such that I may want to change my assumption regarding the growth of the police budget.
Yep, that dovetails right into what I thought might be the next one, Chief, was the long-range discussion that Joanne mentioned.
Sure. So when I met with the subcommittee, I listed off a number of projects that are either being built right now or being proposed. And that would include 68 Foundry Street, 330 North Ave, Harvard Mills, which is 178 Albion Street, 581 Salem Street, 610 Salem Street, Quantico Parkway, Tarrant Lane, 259 Water Street, 404 Lowell, 44 to 48 Crescent Street, 62 to 76 Boundary Street. There's another one on North Ave next to the Knights of Columbus. And then 525 to 527 Salem Street. That adds up, all those buildings add up to a total of almost 1,200 units, which is a combination of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom. So going off previous projects such as 14 Audubon Road and 109, 105 Hopkins Street, that would average out to about an increase of 600 calls per year for the police. I know we'll have more projects the following year, so we continue to grow, the town grows, our calls for service grow. I think we do a great job handling what we have now, but what concerns me is at what point can we not provide the same quality service that we provide now because we're overwhelmed with calls? I think at some point we have to seriously consider adding additional officers to the police department. When I look up at the makeup of the department now, I think we could probably use another detective. At some point, we will probably need another family services officer, and we could certainly use more people on patrol. Ideally, I'd like to have a community policing officer. Ideally, I'd like to have a traffic unit. We certainly get a lot of complaints about traffic. We just don't have the number of people to handle everything. We've had some relief in the last 2 years by taking a little bit of the workload off our shoulders by having the parking enforcement program. That's really helped us out a lot. And I have to say that the mental health clinician, having her here full-time is a huge asset because we have a huge population of people suffering from mental illness in town. And she is busy all the time, 40 hours a week, she is busy. She has regular clientele that come into the station to see her. She's a huge asset when we go on calls, when people are in crisis, helping to defuse those situations. So we've had a little bit of relief there, but as we continue to grow, the seriousness of our calls is also increasing, and it's taking a lot of time. The report taking is time consuming. There was a day and a time when you went to a call, you cleared a call, there was a few notes on it. That was it. Now everything requires a report. You have to leave a report. You don't leave a report, it didn't happen. So everything becomes more time consuming. When you look at the amount of time that an officer spends on a call, the way it's documented in our computer, they arrive at a call, they clear a call, it might be 20 minutes. That doesn't account for the amount of time that they have to spend when they come back to the station to write a report. So we will need more people, and it's something that I'll be pushing for because we really will need the help.
Understood.
Steve, the chief did not ask for a bigger police station, though.
Did not. That's like the first time.
Amy, you have your hand up.
I was just gonna ask if there's anyone that's close to retirement, and does that make a difference with hiring as far as, is it cheaper to bring in someone that's younger versus a higher salary of someone that's closer to retirement?
So officers, whatever rank they're at, they max out at a certain pay step, which would be after three or 4 years. We have 2 people that are eligible for retirement. They were last year. Neither one has given any indication that they plan on leaving. And there'll be 2 more people next year that will be eligible to retire, and I suspect that they will leave. So it's really not cheaper to hire a younger officer, and it's not beneficial to the department, because what you lose when somebody retires is their institutional knowledge. It takes somebody, I believe, a good 5 years to have a solid grasp on how to do police work. So you have a 5-year training period really to bring somebody up to full speed. And the way the laws change now, criminal justice reform, police reform, and all those different things, it's a race to keep up with everything. So to lose experienced police officers certainly does not help us whatsoever. We actually have a very young police department. Our night division, the most senior officers probably have 6 years. So we're young already, and we need the older experienced people to stick around.
Okay, thank you. I had written down that you might put some comments to the overtime. Did I misrepresent that, Bill? Was there some discussion in the subcommittee about overtime associated with COVID or activities this year?
I can.
Bill?
No.
Yep, go ahead, Chief.
So with the overtime, the pandemic started and really went full speed in March. We've been lucky. We've had 2 officers that actually contracted COVID that were out. We have had a large number of officers that have had to quarantine due to positive exposures. So the overtime sick account is up a little. We will recover a lot of that money through the CARES Act. The one overtime budget right now that is in pain, I'll call it, is the overtime emergency account. We've had some serious incidents this year that have really chewed into that. We had the shooting at 14 Audubon Road, and where the expense comes from is the investigative follow-up in the initial response. And these are just a few examples of events that really chewed into that account. So we had the shooting on Audubon Road. We had a couple of death investigations that we had to follow up with, serious motor vehicle accident, some overdoses that we need to follow up with. And then, of course, we had a few weeks ago, we had a SWAT call out for a barricaded subject on Richardson Ave. And then on the 19th, we had the homicide on Otis Street. So we've incurred some significant expenses from that, particularly the homicide on Otis Street. The suspect is in the hospital, and he's in custody, and he's yet to be arraigned because of his medical condition. So because he hasn't been arraigned yet, he needs to be under 24-hour guard. So for the first week, we were doing that, and that was costing overtime. I talked to Sheriff Katusian from the Middlesex Sheriff's Department. He was gracious enough to take over custody of the prisoner, which usually doesn't happen until they've been arraigned. So he's been doing that for 2 weeks. However, today they called, and because of the overtime expenses to them, they've asked us to help pick up some of that again. So the arrangement we have now is that they will watch the prisoner during the week, and then we'll have to watch the prisoner on weekends. So it's still a hefty expense for us, but not as much as it would be if we had to watch the prisoner 7 days a week. The hope is that the suspect will be in good enough medical condition to get him arraigned on Tuesday, once court's back in session. The judge will actually have to travel to the hospital with a court clerk, do the arraignment, and from there, custody will be transferred to the Department of Corrections, and they'll be transferred, the suspect will be transferred to a medical facility under their guard. As far as the other overtime accounts, Joanne had asked about court. The court account hasn't really used up a lot of money yet. And she asked if when court goes back into session, whether we're really going to get slammed because of the backlog of cases. And the answer to that is no, it'll probably start out pretty even keeled because the court only has 2 judges. They can only do so many cases per day. So they can't have everybody coming down at once and trying to just push through everything. There'll be a backlog of cases due to COVID for probably a good 3 to 4 years, would be my guess.
Okay. And we talked about capital. We could defer the vehicles, or if you wanted to, was it you, Joanne, or somebody talked about capital vehicle dialogue?
I can touch on that quickly if you'd like. Last year, Capital awarded us 3 cruisers. Due to COVID, that was cut back to 1. Luckily, our fleet's in fairly good condition. We take good care of the fleet. So we're able to survive losing those 2 cars. I'd like to get 3 this year to continue that replacement cycle that we had before. Really to keep the fleet up and running and to keep it in good condition and to avoid costly repairs, we really need to be on that 3 car per year cycle. So I'd like to return to that this year if I could.
Okay. Very good. My only comment or observation, basically steps and lanes, a lot of people were on a 4.3% raise, individuals. I saw one raise, about an 8.9 raise. I was just curious. I didn't pick up on the person, but somebody got like a 8.5%, 9% raise. Steps in COLA. How does that happen?
So when you look at the rate, the percentage of the raises, the previous year in the previous fiscal year budget, there was a 1.5% raise from July 1st to December 31st. And there was another 1.5 from January 1st to June 30th. So for that first half of the year, there was only a 1.5% raise. In this budget, there's a 3% raise right in July 1st for the whole year. So that's why you see that 4.27, 4.28 for most officers. That's where that comes from. For the ones who go up a little more, there might be a step raise. I think the step for patrolmen from the 2nd step to the 3rd step is a bigger jump than the others. So you might see a step raise. Somebody might reach their longevity pay. So that's why you might see a bigger increase for some officers rather than others. But the majority of the officers, I think, only go up 4.29, 4.22, right in that percentage area. And that's due to that 1.5 and then the next 1.5.
I might point out a lot of those officers, or the vast majority that have a higher raise, they're younger in their career. So they're getting those steps in the beginning and then they max out.
No, understood.
As they tell me during negotiations, there's only 4 steps, right? Or something like that.
Thank you. Yeah, so obviously some substantial raises with some of my observations, but did that help explain it, the 1.5? Thank you. Dan, your hand was up.
Yeah, make sure I'm not muted. I'm not. So we talk about the cars. That sort of triggered a thought. If we expand the force beyond the 47, and we won't do that in 22, but at some point we will, I got to believe that replacing 3 cars a year is not going to be sufficient. Because if you're going to have a larger force of, say, 50 or 51, we're going to need some more cars. So at what point is 3 not enough? I mean, if we go to 51 officers, will we need another car? Because obviously some people are on, some are off. I'm thinking if you're at 47, we have to add three more officers, might be 1 more car. There's some kind of ratio there. I wonder if the chief could help me out a little bit understanding at what point would 3 cars have to become 4?
I think that that's probably a good ratio, 4 officers per car. So maybe add 1 car, but I don't think you would have to do 4 cars per year. Maybe 3, and then 1 year where you do 4.
Oh, yeah, alternate. Okay. All right, good. Thank you. That helps me.
Good. Were there other questions for the chief? Okay,
Can I just add one thing, Mr. Chairman?
yes, please do.
If I may, I certainly agree wholeheartedly with what Joanne was saying, is that these future developments, although they bring in some great new growth, and we talk about that, one thing that we do look at is how do they affect the schools? Because it will be more students. And those are questions that are asked in 40B hearings. They don't ask so much about the effect on public safety, police, fire, DPW. So I think both police and fire, particularly because of the size of and height of some of these buildings and density of them, is going to have, we're going to have to look at that in the next few years. And I know that Doug Butler, he just went.
Yeah, I'll come back on for that one.
What we need is we need a safer grant for police officers, so we can add some police officers with the federal government before we phase them into our own. So I think that's something we'll be looking at. And I got to say, from my standpoint, what a fabulous police department we have from top to bottom. Now, they have handled some incredibly difficult situations that some are public, some that are very private that I know about in talking to the chief. And all you hear is about how well they handled it, regardless of what regardless of what the situation was. So I think a lot of that is training. It starts at the top, and we're really blessed to have this police chief and this police department, because some of my colleagues who are managers in other towns call me and they don't have the same experience that we have here. So Chief, thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good. Doug, did you have a comment? I'm sorry.
No, I thought Steve was looking to chime in and add more firefighters after we just added.
That'll be the next meeting.
Yep. Gerard, you have your hand up. The only comment I was going to make, not related to the chief, more related to, long-term town planning. You get 1,200 units going in already. I need to find more time to visit ZBA meetings and planning board meetings, I guess, because we have a lot of, there's this value of diminishing returns, when the graphs, intersect with each other, and we're talking money but you start talking, these conflicting graphs. I have my concerns, but separate to the finance side.
Just wait till you read some of the new the new laws that are coming out of Beacon Hill that I think will make many projects as of right, as opposed to special permit, which is what I like. I think we've done a much better job with our special permitting here. So that's coming.
Right. And as a guy that works for developers and civil engineering, I speak out of both sides of my mouth when I speak about what I just mentioned. But anyway, Gerard, your hand was up.
Hey, Chief, you made one point that we didn't cover in subcom that I found interesting. When you mentioned adding a community policing officer, if I got that right, that one I didn't quite understand. I've always thought of community policing more as a overarching approach or mindset, not necessarily like a school resource officer that might fall in the lap of one resource. But could you just clarify that for me a little bit? Do I have that completely wrong?
No, you're right about community policing is a concept that the whole department adopts. But when I say community policing officer, I mean one officer dedicated to being a liaison to groups in town, whether it be the neighborhoods group, whether it be the Chamber of Commerce. We have multiple officers assigned to different committees and helping out in a bunch of different areas where I think it would be more beneficial to have one person dedicated to all of those who understands how they all integrate.
Okay. So you see it more as kind of I hate to say the word administrative, but so someone who maybe less street time, but more diplomatic time. I don't know what the right term is.
It's true, because right now we do dedicate a lot of our officer hours to administrative duties.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Jim.
Great. Chief, thanks again. Thanks for your time. Appreciate what you do for us every day.
Thank you.
So
Thanks for having me.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Chief.
I just need to step away to grab something. We want to move right on. Don't wait for me. I'll be back in just 2 minutes. We have one more budget to cover, I think, correct?
Correct.
The last budget we have tonight is the town council budget. We're recommending an increase of $16,637 over the current year. This increase breaks down. There is a $13,985 increase to the tax levy, and there is a $2,652 increase to the water, sewer, and insurance transfer line item. There is an increase in personal services of $15,985, which is for contractual and negotiated increases. This portion of the budget also includes the new updated position, Community and Economic Development Director. This was formerly the Town Planner. We also included 2 new part-time positions, the greeters at the front door of Town Hall. The net increase for the 2 greeters for fiscal '22 is $20,353. We have put in for a CARES reimbursement for the other half of that cost. On the expense side of this budget, there's a $2,000 decrease. We reduced 2 line items. One was the town report line item, and one was the travel line item, each for $1,000. Main expenses within this budget, we have the advertising line item, which is used to advertise town meetings, town council hearings, and to print the town warrant in the newspaper. We also have the professional services line item, $26,000, which is used for the town's traffic engineer. And there's a $6,000 charge in that line item for the Commonwealth of Mass to come out and do our weights and measures. The total request for fiscal '22 is $579,366, with $503,521 coming from tax levy and $75,845 coming from a water, sewer, and water, sewer, and insurance transfer.
Okay. Steve, was there a subcommittee?
On this one right here, the subcommittee, the budget was sent around to them. They were, because this came in later.
Right.
They did see the budget well ahead of everybody. They may have comments or not.
Okay. Anyone else? Subcommittee or otherwise, questions, comments? So I had one observation. When you look at Sherry's salary, so Sherry has a salary and then she has other duties that also earn salary. Is that right, Steve? Is that how I understand the sheet?
Yep. Remember, there used to be 2 people in that department doing those jobs. So now it's 1.
Right. Yep. Okay. And then Jennifer does social media, and Sherry has some duties with the webpage, that different things, different duties, right?
Yep.
Okay. Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, because you hit the spot that I was trying to get my hands around. So Steve, Sherry has, as I read this, 3 different roles: admin, licensing clerk, and the clerk to the board. So I'm curious, the licensing
That's
clerk.
always been the same, right? That was the same last year too.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that for the 21. But the licensing clerk position or part went up almost 9%. And I'm just wondering if you could help me with that.
Well, we changed that whole procedure and we're giving a lot more license. That's completely created a new or implemented a new software package where everything is done online now through a portal, which I guess I know what that means now, including parking tickets and things like that. So a lot more work went involved in that.
Oh, but wait a minute. Why would it be more work if now it's being done online?
Well, believe it or not, people aren't just walking in with paper applications. They've got to be handheld online. So
Ah,
that-
hand holding.
or line holding.
Yeah. So her net hours are going up? Total hours then?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so with all these budgets to date, the spreadsheet, the summary spreadsheet through Kevin shows a 2.72 increase overall, correct?
correct.
Yeah, that's what it is. I'm reading it. So, you know, we have some that have gone up, you know, over 4 and others that have gone up very little, and the net so far 2.72. So, okay. That concludes the list. Steve, do you have any other, I'll go to the rest of the board in a minute. Do you have anything else you want to cover now, you or Kevin?
Only thing I have is that the minutes for the IT, the library, and the police subcommittees will be on your next agenda for approval, because we just got them, obviously, after this was set. The other thing is that the vocational school, the new vocational school is moving along. They're about a year ahead of Wakefield is on our high school through the SBA process. I think Dan and I went to a meeting a couple of years ago on this at the Voc. Although they have not come into our meetings over the last few years, maybe much to our chagrin, we would like to have them come in. When their budget comes forward, which is at the end of March, if it's okay with this group, I'd love to bring them in to not only talk about their budget a little bit, but to talk about the school project. Because the school project is going to be over 317 million, as I see it right now. So that's a pretty big nut spread out through the 12 communities. To put that in perspective, Somerville High was 256 million, and this is 317. So prices aren't coming down. Also, we will be sending out the budgets for the next round, probably tomorrow, this weekend, Kevin?
Correct.
Correct. So you'll have them in plenty of time. So if the subcommittee should meet, I think fire already did meet with the fire chief. I think the others are mainly town hall. So we probably would have a meeting on that. And
right. Subcommittees should continue to, you know, meet with department heads, you know, even before you see budgets, if opportunities allow.
Capital has started meeting. I think Joe Bertrand's a liaison there. I think they started meeting maybe last night, Tuesday night.
That's correct. I attended it for a short period of time. They just started. The rest of the will get involved in it once they do some initial review of the request.
Okay.
Steve, I'm curious, have you heard anything from the GIC? So our healthcare subcommittee, when way might we have something?
For some reason, I'm thinking the first week in March, we're going to get something.
Okay.
Which is in a couple of weeks, but I still think we're between that. I have it at 3 in my forecast. I'd like to think that's where we're going to end up, but I don't know.
All right. Well, if you hear something from the GIC, let me know.
You tell me too.
Oh yeah. It goes both ways.
I will note that the state revenue for the first half of the year blew all expectations. If you go on their website and look what they came through the first half of the year, it was pretty good.
All right, other folks on subcommittee, any updates bring up? Gerard?
Yep, so I joined the school committee's finance and facilities subcommittee meeting this morning, just myself, so it wasn't a full meeting of our subcommittee. So a couple points there. For our subcommittee, Bill, Jim, and Brian, in your inbox is my proposed dates to meet with them. I've asked them to reserve either Thursday or Friday, pending your input or when it works. The dialogue was quite constructive today. Thursday would be out for me, but if you guys need Thursday, I think it'd be okay for me to meet. Some of the points that what we want to accomplish today is really get a sense of what they're dealing with. I kind of mentioned to them that, there are a lot of perceptions out there, certainly among the parent community, around what, whether traditional cost drivers have been lower in the current operating environment with the paradigm shifts. I asked them to be sensitive to the fact we don't know the day-to-day details of what COVID responses look like. So we're going to need sufficient levels of detail, and you should expect some engagement from our board on those particularities. It was a very open and fluid conversation, but with much more detail to come. So hopefully our FinCom subcom will get into that for everyone's collective benefit. What I think we should do to kind of return the openness so far is really challenge ourselves to either, view some of their recorded Zooms where they do get into some of the real details of what they're dealing with the school committee in their discussions. So there's some good information there, but also full members, I think, in order to, and I'll just say clearly, prevent some of the apparent or real acrimony that was expressed last year. I'd love for you guys to get to us your particular questions, your perspective. Again, I'm probably biased a little bit towards the parent community here, but I think depending on where your kids are, what services they're providing, what the schools are going through, and what we're going to hear about could change markedly. So I'd love to hear your questions up front, so the subcommittee could preempt them to the best extent possible. I know the conversation can go a million different directions. I've been the worst abuser of that, going down certain rabbit holes. So, but there are things on special ed. There are elements of moving furniture around. There's just a lot of nuances you could all imagine that they're dealing with, and they're trying to come up with a couple of scenarios, at least to start kind of managing the debate. Obviously, they have to get to one number to present to us in town meeting and all that. Steve could probably speak more eloquent than I, but I think we as a board would do well to think really clearly now about what questions we have, and not make the April meeting, something of a completely brand new thing. We tried to do that last year. I think we, the subcommittee, could have done a better job getting information to you, but it would be great if we heard sort of your feedback or concern areas up front, and we'll get to that. So Jim, my proposal would be that coming out of our FinCom subcom next week, we nudge Doug perhaps to visit this group, the full meeting, as he did last year. My opinion, I think we did a little too early last year. He clearly was not prepared to give us much detail. I think, one half cycle later would probably accrue to everyone's benefit. So that would be my proposal, that we conclude next week, have a first bite at the apple, but then try to nudge Doug to come visit this full committee. So I leave that for your consideration, Mr. Chairman, defer back. Much more detail to come, guys, but really want genuine request for your feedback or sensitivity areas so we can make most use of our time at subcom. Thanks.
Great, and by that, you mean drop you an email or have a conversation, Gerard, with that type of thing?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, great, appreciate that. And Dan?
Yeah, as I say, you raise a good point. So obviously their budget number is one thing, but you mentioned special ed, and one of the things that'd be good to know is, and maybe Kevin can answer this, what we have now for a balance in our special ed reserve, and whether we should be looking at an increase in that reserve to make sure that we don't get hit with some, unforeseen costs that really torpedoes their budget. So, Gerard, I would say just include, whatever discussions you have regarding their budget, also bring up the special ed reserve.
Great point, Dan, and that actually came up today as well. They're tracking towards needing to tap the stabilization fund.
Okay, great.
Yeah, right now there's 524,000 in that sped state.
Oh. Oh, we're good then, for now.
We replenished
think.
it last year or a year before.
Okay, that was all I thought I needed to cover. Anybody else on a subcommittee level? Just general terms. Again, if you haven't met, we haven't met with DPW. We will at some point in the near term, but we'll keep chipping away.
One thing, town council set town meeting for Saturday, May 8th at 8 a.m. If you didn't see that.
Yep. Very good. Our next full meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. Sherry's already sent some info around relative to Zoom meeting and so forth. If you don't have it, you'll get it. And I think that's all I wanted to cover tonight. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Unless Doug, did you have your hand up? Can't hear you.
Don't encourage him.
No. I was waving goodbye.
I move adjournment, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? So moved.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.